Per. Cowboy, you saved the youngest now. By sacred law, you must marry all four sisters. Old Western love story. The sun had just begun its climb over the horizon, painting the western sky with streaks of gold and orange. Narration. Dust rose in tiny clouds along the quiet road leading to the small town of Dry Creek. The town was simple, made up of a few wooden buildings, a general store, a blacksmith, and a tiny saloon that had already started to fill with early risers. Per pet. Horses clopped along the streets as ranch hands went about their morning chores, and the air carried the familiar smell of hay, leather, and smoke from the chimneys. A lone rider appeared on the horizon, kicking up dust as he moved steadily toward the town. Bear. His name was Luke Carson, a young cowboy known in the surrounding counties for his courage and skill with a horse. Luke was not a man who sought trouble, but trouble seemed to find him more often than most. He had a quiet confidence, a calm way of observing things, and a sharp mind that often helped him avoid danger until it could be faced head-on. Today, however, something in the air felt different. The wind carried an unusual tension, and Luke could sense it even before he reached the town. As he entered Dry Creek, Luke noticed a group of people gathered near the edge of town, whispering nervously and pointing toward the nearby Harper Ranch. The Harper family was well known in the area, a family of 4 sisters who lived on a large spread of land just beyond the town limits. They were respected, kind-hearted, and known for their hard work. But today, fear was etched on every face in the small crowd. Luke urged his horse forward, asking one of the townsfolk what was happening. The man's eyes were wide, and he spoke quickly, almost out of breath. "It's the Harper girls!" Narration. "Outlaws! They've taken the youngest one, Emily. They're holding her somewhere near the canyon. Nobody dares to go after them. Please, be careful, mister." Luke felt a surge of determination. He had never met Emily, or her sisters for that matter, but he could not ignore a call for help. There was a certain code among cowboys, one that went beyond law and punishment. If someone was in danger, you stepped forward. He nodded, thanking the man briefly before galloping toward the canyon where the outlaws had been spotted. The ground was rough and uneven, but Luke's horse was strong and steady, and together they made quick progress across the prairie. As Luke approached the canyon, he could see the outlines of 2 rough-looking men guarding a small figure tied to a post. The girl struggled against her bonds, calling out for help, her voice shaking but filled with determination. Luke slowed his horse, observing the scene carefully. He had faced outlaws before, and he knew that a direct charge might put the girl in more danger than she was already in. Instead, he studied the land, looking for any advantage. A ridge, a fallen tree, a shadow he could use for cover. The outlaws were armed and careless, laughing at the girl's struggles as if it were a game. Luke's jaw tightened. He could feel his heart beating faster, not out of fear, but out of a sense of responsibility. He could not let harm come to her. Carefully, he maneuvered his horse behind a large rock, keeping out of sight while he considered his options. His mind raced through possibilities, distraction, surprise, speed. Then, deciding quickly, he led his horse in a sudden dash toward the nearest outlaw, shouting a loud yell to startle them. The first outlaw barely had time to react before Luke grabbed him, using his strength to knock him off balance. The second outlaw turned, pulling his gun, but Luke was faster. With a swift movement, he disarmed the man, and the fight ended quickly. It was over before the girl could fully realize she was safe. She blinked in surprise, her eyes wide with relief as Luke approached and untied her.
"Are you all right?" Luke asked, keeping his voice calm but firm.
Emily nodded, brushing tears from her cheeks.
She was small and delicate, but there was a strength in her eyes, a fire that made Luke respect her even more.
Bird.
"Thank you,"
she whispered,
her voice trembling.
I thought they would. They won't hurt you now, Luke interrupted gently, helping her onto his horse behind him. Hold on tight. We'll get you back home. The ride back to the Harper Ranch was tense. Emily clung to Luke, fear slowly giving way to relief. Along the way, she told him bits and pieces about her sisters and the family's life on the ranch. Luke listened carefully, noting her courage and her concern for her sisters even in such a frightening moment. It was clear that the Harper family was close-knit, and Emily's bravery was a reflection of the love and care she had grown up with. When they arrived at the ranch, the older sisters, Sarah, Margaret, and Clara, rushed out to meet them, their faces a mixture of fear and relief.
The reunion was emotional. Emily jumped from Luke's horse and ran into her sister's arms, sobbing and laughing at the same time.
Luke stood back, allowing the family their moment, feeling a quiet satisfaction. He had saved her, and she was safe now. However, the moment of relief was short-lived. An elderly man from the town, one of the respected elders who maintained the traditions of the community, approached Luke with a serious expression. His eyes were kind but firm, and his voice carried the weight of authority. "You've done a brave thing, young man," he said. "Saving the youngest of the Harper sisters is no small act, but you must know, by the sacred law of this land, your duty does not end with her. The law states that anyone who saves the youngest must honor the family and take responsibility for all of them. That includes marriage." Luke froze for a moment, caught off guard.
He had saved Emily out of instinct, not expectation, and the idea of being bound to an entire family in marriage was overwhelming. He looked at the sisters, who were watching him with a mixture of curiosity and caution.
Their expressions were respectful but serious, showing that the law was not a joke. It was a code that had been followed for generations in this part of the frontier. Luke's mind raced. He respected tradition, and he understood the reasoning behind the law. It was meant to protect families from harm in a world where danger was ever present. But he also felt the weight of personal choice, the freedom he had always valued as a cowboy. Still, he could not deny the responsibility now placed before him. He had acted with courage, and courage sometimes meant facing the unexpected even when it challenged everything he thought he knew about life and love. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the ranch, Luke realized that his journey with the Harper family was only beginning. Saving Emily had been the first step, but understanding and honoring the sacred law would require patience, care, and perhaps even love that he had not yet imagined. He could feel the beginnings of a connection, not just with Emily, but with her entire family, each sister carrying her own story, her own dreams, and her own strength. That evening, as the Harper family gathered for dinner, Luke sat quietly, observing the girls as they moved about the table, serving food and talking with one another. He noticed how they supported each other, how they laughed and argued in ways that showed both their independence and their deep familial bond.
Luke understood that to protect them, to honor the sacred law, he would need to do more than act bravely in a single moment.
He would need to become part of their lives, earn their trust, and learn the nuances of their personalities, hopes, and fears. Emily, sitting closest to him, offered a small smile that spoke volumes. It was a mixture of gratitude, hope, and cautious curiosity. Luke returned the smile, realizing that the rescue was only the beginning. The real challenge, and perhaps the real reward, lay ahead in navigating the complex and delicate bonds of the Harper sisters, understanding their world, and discovering the kind of loyalty and love that the frontier demanded. Outside, the prairie wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. Luke knew that the path before him would be difficult and filled with unexpected trials, but he also felt a quiet certainty in his heart. Brent. Courage had brought him here, and now compassion and honor would guide his steps. The Harper family, once strangers, were now bound to him in a way that went beyond duty. It was a connection that could shape all of their lives, for better or for worse. Brrr. And so, as the stars began to appear in the western sky, Luke Carson prepared himself for the journey ahead. Brr. He had saved the youngest sister, yes, but the sacred law had set him on a path he had never imagined, one that would test his strength, his heart, and his very understanding of love and family. The story of Luke and the Harper sisters had begun, and the horizon was wide, open, and full of possibilities. The morning after the rescue, the Harper ranch was quiet, but the tension from the previous day still lingered in the air. The sun rose over the rolling prairie, casting a golden glow across the fields and the wooden fences that bordered the family's land. Birds sang softly, and a gentle breeze rustled through the tall grass. But inside the Harper home, Luke Carson could feel the weight of the sacred law pressing down on him. Breaths. Luke had spent the night in the small guest room of the Harper home, but sleep had not come easily. Thoughts of Emily, her frightened eyes, and the gratitude she had shown circled in his mind. Breath. Then came the memory of the town elder's words. By saving the youngest, you must honor the family and take responsibility for all of them. That includes marriage. Luke could still hear the seriousness in the man's voice, and it left him both unsettled and intrigued. He dressed quietly and stepped out onto the porch, taking in the vast expanse of the ranch. The Harper family's land stretched for miles, with cattle grazing in the fields and a small creek winding its way through the property. It was a beautiful, peaceful place, but it was also isolated, which explained why the outlaws had thought they could cause harm without being noticed. Luke's horse whinnied softly as he approached the stables, and he ran a hand over its neck, feeling the animal's warmth and strength. Inspiration. Today, he realized, was going to be about more than courage. It would be about understanding, patience, and learning to navigate the lives of 4 very different sisters. The sound of footsteps on the porch made him turn. It was Emily, still slightly shy but holding herself with a quiet confidence that surprised him. "Good morning," she said softly. Inspiration. "I hope you slept well."
Luke nodded. "I did."
Breathe. "Thank you for asking. And how are you feeling this morning?" Emily hesitated for a moment, then smiled faintly. Better. Much better. Inspiration. I feel safe now. "Are you going to stay for breakfast?" "I think I should," Luke said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It seems only right to spend the day here and make sure you and your sisters are truly safe." She led the way back into the house, where the other sisters were already busy preparing breakfast. Sarah, the eldest, was placing plates on the table, her brow furrowed with concern. Margaret was tending to the fire in the stove, ensuring the meal would be hot and ready. Clara, the youngest after Emily, was gathering fresh bread from a basket, humming softly to herself. Luke felt a mixture of admiration and nervousness. Each sister carried herself with strength, independence, and care for one another. They were a family bonded by love, respect, and shared responsibility, a family that had survived hardship and would continue to do so with or without him.
"Good morning, Mr. Carson," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. There was no warmth in her tone yet, only caution. "We are grateful for what you did yesterday."
"Emily is safe because of you." "Thank you, ma'am," Luke replied, tipping his hat slightly. "I didn't do it for thanks," I did it because it was the right thing to do. Margaret looked at him carefully, her eyes thoughtful. We've heard of the sacred law, she said, narration. And we know what it means. Are you aware of what the elder told you? Luke nodded.
I am, and I won't deny that it's unexpected.
But I respect the law, and I want to do what's right for your family. Clara, ever the playful one, gave a small smile. Well, that's good to hear. It will be interesting having you around. But you better work hard if you want to earn our trust. Luke smiled in return, feeling a mixture of amusement and determination. He knew that gaining the sisters' trust would not be easy. He had saved Emily, yes, but the law demanded more than a single act of bravery. To honor the sacred law, he would need to spend time with each sister, understand their lives, and show that he could be a protector, a friend, and perhaps one day more. Breakfast was quiet at first. Each person focused on their food, the air filled with the soft clatter of dishes and the occasional cough. But as the meal progressed, conversation began to flow. Emily shared stories of the ranch, of her daily chores, and the ways her sisters helped her. Luke listened intently, asking questions when appropriate, showing genuine interest. The sisters, noticing his attention and respect, slowly began to soften toward him. After breakfast, Luke followed Emily outside to inspect the ranch and ensure that everything was in order. The Harper land was larger than he had imagined, with fields ready for planting, livestock that needed tending, and fences that required repair. It was clear that the family worked hard every day to maintain their home, and Luke respected their dedication. As they walked through the fields, Emily spoke about her sisters individually, giving Luke insight into their personalities. Sarah is strong and protective, she explained. She looks after us all, even when we don't want her to. Margaret is quiet, but she sees everything and understands more than we realize. Clara, she brings light into our days, even when things are hard.
Luke nodded, absorbing each detail.
It was important, he realized, to know not just the family as a whole, but each sister as an individual.
He could not approach this as one single responsibility. To honor the sacred law, he would need to connect with each of them, understand their strengths, their fears, and their hopes. Over the next several days, Luke began to spend more time at the Harper Ranch. He helped with chores, rode out to check the cattle, repaired fences, and assisted with planting seeds in the fields. Each task gave him a chance to observe the sisters in their natural element, the way Sarah directed the work efficiently, how Margaret solved small problems quietly and intelligently, and how Clara lifted everyone's spirits with her laughter.
Emily, of course, remained close to him, offering small smiles and quiet encouragement. It was not always easy.
There were moments of tension, particularly with Sarah, who questioned Luke's intentions and abilities. It's one thing to save Emily, she said sharply one afternoon, but it's another to be responsible for all of us.
You need to prove that you can handle more than just courage in a fight.
Luke met her gaze steadily.
I understand, he replied. And I intend to. I'm here for your family, not just for one day or one action. I will do my best to earn your trust in every way I can.
Margaret and Clara watched quietly, exchanging glances that suggested approval, while Emily smiled faintly, her eyes shining with gratitude and hope.
It was clear that Luke's actions were beginning to speak louder than words. The sisters were seeing not just a brave cowboy, but someone willing to learn, to help, and to become a part of their lives. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of pink and purple, the family gathered outside near the creek, Luke sat on a log, Emily beside him, while the other sisters worked nearby, finishing the day's chores. The air was calm, filled with the gentle sounds of flowing water and distant birds returning to their nests. Emily turned to him and said softly, "I know this law. It might seem strange to you, but it's meant to protect families like ours. And I think you're the kind of person who could help us. Not just now, but in the future too."
Luke considered her words, feeling the truth in them.
The sacred law was more than a rule. It was a promise of protection, care, and unity. And he knew, deep down, that he could not walk away, purring. Not when he had already started to understand the hearts of these sisters. Not when he had already begun to care for them. That night, as he lay in the guest room once more, Luke thought about the days ahead. He knew there would be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But he also knew that courage alone had brought him here. Compassion, respect, and honor would guide the rest of his journey. Saving Emily had been the first step. Understanding and embracing the law, connecting with each sister, and proving his dedication would be the steps to come. And as the stars twinkled above the Harper Ranch, Luke felt a quiet determination growing within him. The sacred law was not just a test. It was an opportunity to become part of something larger than himself, to protect, to care, and perhaps even to find a new kind of family in a land that demanded strength, courage, and heart. The journey had just begun, and Luke Carson was ready to face it. One day, one moment, one sister at a time. The days on the Harper Ranch settled into a rhythm, but life was never truly quiet in the Old West. Luke Carson had grown accustomed to the vast stretches of land, the endless horizon, and the constant work required to keep a ranch running. Each day presented new chores, new responsibilities, and new chances to prove himself to the Harper sisters. It was clear to him that saving Emily was only the beginning. Building trust, showing care, and understanding the sisters' lives would be a far greater challenge. Luke started each morning by checking on the livestock. Cows and horses had to be fed and watered, fences inspected, and the fields prepared for planting. He worked alongside the sisters, learning the ways of the ranch and discovering that each of them had their own strengths that made the household run smoothly. Sarah, the eldest, had a no-nonsense attitude and a sharp eye for detail. She was strict when needed but fair, and she expected Luke to meet her standards. Margaret, calm and quiet, had an uncanny way of noticing problems before they appeared, whether it was a broken fence or a sick animal. Clara, the playful youngest after Emily, had a lightheartedness that kept the family smiling even during hard times. And Emily, of course, had a gentle spirit, often encouraging Luke with small words of thanks or quiet smiles. One morning, Luke accompanied Sarah to check on the far pasture, where the cattle had wandered close to the edge of a steep cliff. Sarah rode confidently, guiding the cattle with ease, and Luke followed, matching her pace and learning quickly how to handle the stubborn animals.
"Careful with that one," Sarah said, pointing to a large cow that had begun to stray toward the edge. "If it slips, we could lose more than just the animal." Luke nodded, moving cautiously to guide the cow back to safety.
"Got it," he said, using his lasso skillfully to nudge the animal away from danger. Sarah observed silently for a moment, then gave a nod of approval. "You're learning fast. That's good." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, but it gave Luke a chance to talk with Sarah, not as a cowboy to a ranch hand, but as one person trying to understand another. "Sarah, I know it's not easy trusting someone new," Luke began.
"I can't expect you to, but I want you to know my intentions are true. I want to help, and I want to be part of your family's life."
Sarah looked at him, her eyes guarded.
It's not just about trust, Luke.
It's about proving yourself. Actions matter more than words. She paused, then added softer. I can see you're trying. That's a start. While Luke was learning to understand Sarah, he also spent time with Margaret. She preferred quieter moments, tasks that required patience and careful thought. One afternoon, Luke helped her repair a section of the fence that had been damaged during a recent windstorm. Margaret handed him tools, instructed him on how to secure the posts, and offered gentle guidance. You're strong, Luke, but don't rush, Margaret said, watching him work. Strength alone doesn't fix everything. Precision and care matter too.
Luke listened carefully, appreciating her wisdom.
He realized that Margaret's quiet nature often masked sharp intelligence. She observed everything and understood the ranch and its people better than anyone else.
I understand, he said. I'll follow your lead. Margaret's small smile was a sign of approval, and Luke felt a sense of satisfaction.
Clara, on the other hand, was playful and lively, bringing challenges of a different kind.
She would hide tools, tease Luke during chores, or challenge him to races on horseback.
One afternoon, she laughed as she dodged him, saying, "You can't catch me, cowboy." Luke laughed in return, chasing her around the yard. "I'll catch you yet," he shouted, and the chase became a game of speed and skill, ending only when they both collapsed in laughter under the shade of a large oak tree. Clara's teasing was more than fun. It was a test of patience, a way to see if Luke could handle unexpected situations with humor and grace. Emily, always nearby, observed quietly. She joined in only occasionally, her gentle laughter adding a soft note to the day's work. Luke noticed how much she cared for her sisters, and how her presence brought a sense of calm to the household. Every interaction, every small task was shaping his understanding of the family, and he felt himself growing more connected with each passing day. But life on the ranch was not without danger. One afternoon, Luke noticed a group of riders on the distant horizon. They were unfamiliar men, and their movement toward the Harper Ranch was deliberate. Luke's instincts kicked in immediately. He warned the sisters, who quickly gathered near the house, worry written on their faces. Sarah grabbed a rifle. Margaret helped Emily and Clara into the safe room, and Luke moved to intercept the riders. The strangers stopped at the edge of the property, their intentions unclear. Luke approached carefully, hands visible, speaking firmly. Who are you and what do you want? The leader of the group sneered.
We're just passing through,
he said, though Luke could see the tension in their posture, the way their eyes scanned the ranch.
He sensed trouble. These men were scouts, looking for an easy target, or perhaps testing the Harper family's defenses. Luke knew he had to protect the sisters, but he also knew that violence should be the last resort. He signaled for the sisters to stay inside while he kept the strangers at a distance. With careful words and confident posture, he forced them to move along, convincing them that the Harper Ranch was not a place to test. After the men left, Luke returned to the house, relieved but aware that danger could return at any moment. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, the sisters expressed their gratitude. Sarah, ever practical, spoke first.
Luke, you handled that well today. You kept your head and protected us.
That matters more than words can say, Margaret added softly. We are fortunate to have someone who thinks carefully as well as acts bravely. Clara clapped her hands and said, "And you didn't let those men scare us. You're proving you belong here, cowboy." Emily simply smiled, her eyes shining with admiration and relief. Luke felt a warmth in his chest. The trust he was earning was not instant, but it was real. Desperation. He realized that being part of this family was more than following the sacred law. It was about proving through actions day by day that he cared, that he could be relied upon, and that he understood the responsibilities of love, family, and protection. Over the following weeks, Luke continued to build connections with the sisters. He learned their routines, their likes and dislikes, and their fears. He shared stories of his own past, of the challenges he had faced as a young cowboy, and the lessons he had learned about courage, loyalty, and honesty. Slowly, the sisters began to see him not just as a rescuer or an outsider, but as someone who genuinely cared for them all. One afternoon, Emily approached him quietly as he repaired a section of the barn roof. "Luke," she said softly, "thank you for staying with us."
Not just for saving me, but for everything you're doing. It means more than you know.
Luke paused, looking down at her. "I didn't come here to be thanked," he replied.
"I came here because it was the right thing to do. And now, I realize it's more than just right. It's important to me. I want to protect you all, to be part of your family." Emily's eyes brightened, and she smiled, a mixture of relief and hope. "I think the others are beginning to feel the same way." Luke nodded, feeling a sense of purpose and belonging he had never known before. The Harper sisters were no longer strangers. They were a family he had chosen to protect, support, and care for. And in return, they were beginning to trust him, to accept him, and perhaps even to rely on him in ways he had not anticipated. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Luke stood on the porch of the Harper house, looking out over the prairie. The ranch was peaceful now, but he knew that challenges would come again. The frontier was a place of constant change, danger, and opportunity. And he also knew that he was no longer alone. He had a family, and together they could face whatever trials lay ahead. The sacred law had brought him here, yes, but it was his courage, his actions, and his growing bond with the Harper sisters that were shaping his path. Luke Carson understood that being a part of this family would require patience, strength, and care. But he also knew that it would bring rewards beyond anything he had imagined. A sense of purpose, connection, and perhaps even love in its many forms. As night fell over the Harper ranch, the sisters gathered inside, talking softly, sharing stories, and preparing for the next day. Luke remained outside for a moment longer, feeling the cool breeze on his face and the stars twinkling above. He smiled to himself, knowing that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test him, teach him, and ultimately change him forever. And in that quiet, peaceful moment, Luke Carson made a silent promise to honor the sacred law, to protect and care for the Harper sisters, and to face whatever challenges the Old West would bring together. The Harper Ranch had enjoyed a few peaceful weeks, but Luke Carson knew better than to assume that calm could last long in the Old West. The prairie was a land of beauty and freedom, but it was also a land of danger. Wild animals and unexpected storms were always possible. Luke had grown comfortable with the Harper sisters, understanding their routines, their personalities, and their bond as a family. But he also understood that the real test of his loyalty and courage could come at any moment. One late afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky with streaks of red and gold, Luke spotted movement on the horizon. 4 riders were approaching the ranch, their horses kicking up clouds of dust. Something about them felt deliberate.
Luke's heart tightened. He sensed danger immediately.
These were not travelers passing by. They were intruders, and they were heading straight for the Harper property.
He called the sisters together quickly.
Sarah's sharp eyes narrowed, and she motioned for Emily, Margaret, and Clara to move inside.
"We need to prepare," she said, her voice steady but tense.
"Luke, can you handle this?" Luke nodded, already mounting his horse. I'll do everything I can to keep you safe. Stay inside and stay quiet. The sisters moved toward the house, quickly locking doors and windows. Margaret helped Emily and Clara to a safe corner of the home, while Sarah took a rifle from the storage room, her posture tense and ready. Luke's heart ached for them. He had grown to care for each sister individually, and the thought of any harm coming to them made his blood run cold. The riders reached the edge of the property. Luke could see that they were armed and that there were at least 5 of them. One, clearly their leader, shouted something unintelligible, pointing toward the house. Luke steadied himself, his hand resting on the hilt of his revolver. He had faced dangerous men before, but this was different. Brave. This time, it was personal. These were not strangers in the wilderness. These were threats to the family he had chosen to protect. He rode out slowly, his horse steady beneath him.
"This is private property," he called, his voice loud and firm.
Narration. Turn back, and no one will be hurt. The leader laughed, a harsh, grating sound. We don't scare that easily, cowboy. Step aside or we'll teach you a lesson. Luke shook his head. I won't let you harm this family. He drew his revolver, keeping it low but ready. The other riders shifted, unsure how to respond.
Luke could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to touch. The sisters were inside, watching from windows, their faces pale but determined.
Luke could sense their fear, and it gave him resolve. He would not fail them. The first rider spurred his horse forward, swinging a whip. Luke anticipated the move and sidestepped, firing a warning shot into the ground. The sound cracked sharply across the prairie, startling the horses. The riders hesitated, reassessing their plan. Luke used the pause to maneuver his horse closer, keeping himself between the attackers and the Harper home. He could feel the sweat on his brow, the pounding of his heart, but he remained calm, focused. Leave now, he shouted, his voice carrying across the open land. There's no honor in harming a family. One of the intruders drew a gun and fired, the bullet whizzing past Luke's shoulder. Luke felt the wind from the shot but stayed steady. He returned fire, aiming carefully to avoid harming the horses or the men more than necessary. His experience as a cowboy riding through dangerous territory had taught him precision, patience, and courage. Each shot, each movement was calculated to protect, not to destroy. The fight continued for several tense minutes, dust and smoke swirling around the horses' hooves. Luke moved with skill, protecting the perimeter and keeping the intruders away from the house. He could see the sisters inside, their eyes wide but trusting him completely. That trust fueled his determination. He would not let them down. Eventually, the leader realized they were outmatched. Luke's position was strong, his movements confident and unpredictable. The outlaws had underestimated the cowboy who had saved the youngest Harper sister, not realizing that he was also a protector, a strategist, and a man who would risk everything for those he cared about. With a final shout, the intruders turned their horses and galloped away, kicking up dust as they disappeared into the horizon. Luke lowered his revolver, breathing heavily but relieved. He had defended the ranch successfully, keeping the sisters safe without serious injury to anyone. The house was intact, the livestock unharmed, and the Harper family safe.
It was a victory, but also a reminder of the constant dangers that lurked in the Old West. He dismounted and walked toward the house where the sisters were waiting.
Sarah approached first, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. You did it, she said simply.
You kept us safe.
We did it, he replied, acknowledging the strength of the sisters as well. You stayed calm, stayed hidden, and trusted me. That made all the difference. Emily stepped forward, her eyes shining. "Luke, you risked everything for us," she said softly. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Luke said, smiling gently. He glances around and desperate. "Just be safe. That's enough." Margaret and Clara joined the group, expressions of relief and gratitude on their faces. Luke could see the bond between them had strengthened not just because of his actions, but because they had faced danger together. Fear had a way of making people rely on one another, and Luke realized that this moment had drawn him closer to the Harper sisters than he had ever imagined.
After the intruders had gone and the immediate danger had passed, Luke helped the sisters check the ranch, repairing minor damage and ensuring everything was in order. The work was hard, but the sisters were grateful for his steady presence.
They shared small smiles, quiet laughter, and reassurances that they were safe, and Luke felt a warmth in his chest he could not ignore. Protecting them was no longer just a duty. It had become a purpose, a part of who he was. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned deep shades of purple and blue, the family gathered inside. The fire in the hearth crackled, casting warm light across the room. Sarah poured tea, Margaret arranged simple plates of food, and Clara hummed softly while Emily sat close to Luke, her hand brushing his arm in a gesture of trust and comfort. Luke looked around the room and felt a sense of belonging he had not known before. The Harper sisters were no longer just people he had rescued. They were a family he had chosen, and they had chosen him in return. The sacred law had brought him here, but it was his courage, care, and respect that had earned him a place in their lives. Emily leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Thank you, Luke, for everything." Luke gently patted her hand. "It's not just me, Emily. It's all of us. We protect each other. That's what family does." Sarah smiled faintly, a rare moment of softness crossing her usually stern face.
"You're learning well, Luke. But remember, this is only the beginning. The frontier is full of challenges."
Today was just one test. But, understanding the truth in her words, the Old West was unpredictable, and danger could return at any time. But he also knew that together they could face whatever came their way. Strength, courage, and trust had carried them through today, and those qualities would carry them through tomorrow as well. As the fire burned low and the stars appeared in the night sky, Luke Carson realized that the Harper sisters had become more than a family he was sworn to protect by law. They had become a part of his life, shaping his heart, his purpose, and his understanding of love, loyalty, and courage. The events of the day would stay with him forever, a reminder that bravery was not just about fighting. It was about standing firm when others relied on you, and protecting those who could not protect themselves.
And so, as the prairie lay quiet under the silver light of the moon,
Luke knew that whatever trials awaited, he would face them with the Harper sisters at his side. Bound not only by the sacred law, but by trust, respect, and a bond that had grown stronger with every challenge, every act of courage, and every moment shared on the wide, open land of the frontier. The morning after the attack, the Harper Ranch was quiet, but there was a sense of calm in the air that hadn't been there before. The outlaws were gone. The land was safe for the moment, and the Harper sisters had begun to feel a deep sense of trust in Luke Carson. For his part, Luke had never felt more connected to anyone in his life. Saving Emily had been the first step, but protecting the family through the recent danger had cemented a bond that went far beyond the expectations of the sacred law. The sun rose gently over the prairie, spilling golden light across the fields.
Luke walked toward the house, feeling a mix of anticipation and reflection. He knew that the time had come to face the reality of the sacred law more fully.
He had lived with the sisters for weeks, learned their routines, shared in their laughter, and defended them in times of danger. Now the next step was acceptance. an understanding of what it truly meant to honor the law, not out of obligation, but out of respect, care, and love. Brett. Emily stepped out onto the porch, her hair catching the sunlight as she smiled at Luke.
Good morning,
She said softly.
I wanted to talk with you. Luke nodded. Of course.
Inspiration. What's on your mind? Emily hesitated for a moment, looking down at her hands, then met his gaze. You've been with us for a while now.
You've helped us in ways I didn't know we could be helped. You've protected us, taught us, and stayed by our side.
I think we're ready to move forward, to accept what the law requires, but in a way that makes sense for all of us.
Luke felt a warmth in his chest. He had anticipated challenges, doubts, and hesitation from the sisters, but Emily's words were full of hope and sincerity.
He nodded, understanding that this was not just a legal obligation, it was a bond built on mutual respect and trust.
I'm ready, he said quietly.
I've come to care for all of you, and I will do whatever it takes to honor that bond. One by one, the sisters gathered on the porch. Sarah's expression was firm but softer than usual, her eyes showing admiration.
Luke, you've proven yourself, she said, not just through words, but through every action since you arrived.
We trust you. Margaret, quiet but thoughtful, stepped forward.
You have earned our respect, Luke. You've shown patience, courage, and understanding.
That matters more than the law itself. Clara, ever playful yet sincere, grinned. And you've survived my tests! I think that means you're officially one of us. Her laughter lightened the mood, and even Sarah cracked a small smile. Luke looked at each sister, seeing in their eyes the bond that had grown over weeks of shared work, shared fears, and shared victories. The sacred law had brought him here, yes, but it was their trust, their acceptance, and the connections they had built together that made the law meaningful. I promise, Luke said, his voice steady, to protect you, to care for you, and to stand by you no matter what the future brings. Not because it's required, but because I want to. Because you are my family now. The sisters nodded, their expressions reflecting relief, gratitude, and hope. Together, they walked toward the fields, ready to face the day and the life ahead. The ranch was alive with activity once more, each sister returning to her tasks with renewed energy, and Luke by their side, ready to help wherever he was needed. Over the following days, life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Luke continued to work alongside the sisters, tending the livestock, repairing fences, planting crops, and maintaining the house. But there was more than work in their lives now. There was laughter, shared stories, quiet moments by the creek, and evenings spent around the fire. Luke learned the nuances of each sister. Sarah's protective nature, Margaret's thoughtful mind, Clara's playful spirit, and Emily's gentle heart. He came to understand their dreams, their fears, and the ways they supported one another. One afternoon while repairing the barn roof, Emily approached him quietly.
Luke, she said, do you ever think about the future? About what life will be like for all of us? Luke paused, wiping sweat from his brow.
I do, he admitted. And I want it to be good. Peaceful, safe, but also full of hope, laughter, and love. That's what I see when I look at this family. Emily smiled softly. I think we all do. And I think we've learned that we're stronger together than apart. The sisters gathered that evening under the wide open sky, the prairie stretching endlessly around them.
They sat together, sharing stories of the past, dreams for the future, and reflections on the events that had brought them here.
Luke listened, contributing where he could, and realized that the bond they shared was more than the sacred law. It was a family built on trust, respect, and shared experience. As the stars began to twinkle above the Harper Ranch, Luke felt a deep sense of peace. He had faced danger, uncertainty, and the weight of tradition, and he had emerged stronger, more connected, and more certain of his place in the world. The Harper sisters were no longer just a family he had rescued. They were a family he had chosen, and one that had chosen him in return. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Seasons changed, bringing rain, sun, and the growth of crops and livestock. Luke continued to work tirelessly alongside the sisters, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. He celebrated their victories, comforted them during difficulties, and stood firmly by their side through every challenge.
One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the fields, Luke and the sisters gathered near the creek.
The water flowed gently, reflecting the colors of the sky. It was a moment of calm and reflection, a reminder of all they had endured together.
Sarah spoke first. Luke, we've come a long way since that day you saved Emily.
You've proven that family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, care, and loyalty. You've become part of our lives in a way that can't be undone. Margaret nodded. We've learned that strength comes in many forms: courage, patience, understanding. You've shown all of them, Luke. Clara grinned, her usual playful spirit shining. And you've survived all my tricks and tests. That's something, too. Emily stepped forward, taking Luke's hand gently. We accept the law, Luke. But more than that, we accept you, Breath. Not because we have to, but because we want to. You are our protector, our friend, and our family. Luke felt a wave of emotion. He had come to the Harper Ranch as a stranger, a cowboy passing through, and now he stood surrounded by people who had become his life, his purpose, and his heart. He squeezed Emily's hand gently and looked at each sister in turn.
I accept you too, he said.
Not because of the law, but because of who you are. I will always stand by you, care for you, and protect you.
The sisters smiled, and for the first time in a long while, the Harper Ranch felt completely at peace. The threats of the past were behind them, and the future was open, bright, and full of possibilities. The sacred law had brought them together, but it was their hearts, their trust, and their bond that would carry them forward. That night, as the prairie lay quiet under the moonlight, Luke Carson stood outside the Harper home, looking up at the stars. He thought of all that had happened, the rescue, the challenges, the fights, and the moments of laughter and trust. He realized that life in the Old West was unpredictable, but with courage, care, and family, any challenge could be faced. The Harper sisters had become more than just a family he protected. They were part of his life, shaping his every thought and action, and he in turn had become a part of theirs. Together, they would face the future, strong, united, and ready for whatever the frontier had to offer. As Luke gazed at the prairie stretching endlessly before him, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. But he had honored the sacred law, yes, but more importantly, he had built connections that went far beyond duty. He had found a family, a purpose, and a place in the world that he could truly call home. And so, under the vast starry sky of the Old West, Luke Carson and the Harper sisters began a new chapter of their lives, bound not only by law but by trust, loyalty, and the enduring power of love. The ranch would continue to face challenges, as life always did, but together they were ready. Together, they were strong. Together, they were a family, The horizon glowed with the promise of a new day, full of hope, laughter, and the unspoken understanding that no matter what came next, they would face it side by side. The story of Luke Carson and the Harper sisters had reached a moment of peace, but it was also the beginning of countless adventures, shared dreams, and a life built on courage, respect, and the unbreakable bonds of family. And as the wind whispered across the prairie, carrying the scent of fresh grass and open land, Luke smiled, knowing that he was exactly where he was meant to be, home.